I just want to encourage everybody out there to like keep doing the work and know that the harder you try, no matter what you're trying at, like it's going to lead you closer to an opportunity like what we're having right now. These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. For those of you out there that are truck guys like me, I want to talk to you about one of our newest sponsors, Decked. If you don't know Decked, they make bomb-proof drawer systems to keep your gear organized and safely locked away in the back of your truck. Clothes, rifles, packs, kill kits can all get organized and at the ready so you don't get to your hunting spot and waste time trying to find stuff. We all know that guy. Don't be that guy. They also have a line of storage cases that fit perfectly in the drawers. We use them for organizing ammunition, knives, glassing equipment, extra clothing, and camping stuff. You can get a 2-drawer system for all dimensions of full-size truck beds, or a single drawer system that fits mid-size truck beds. And, maybe best of all, they're all made in the USA. So, get decked and get after it. Check them out at decked.com. Shipping is always free. I actually don't know if I've ever been more excited in anticipation of a conversation than right now.
No shit?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's do introductions.
Self-introductions.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'm Cliff Gray. Oh, where do I start, man? So tired. I feel like the sun beat the introduction out of me today. Yeah, so I guess the intro that I guess is most relevant is I was an outfitter for 11 years and sold that outfitting business 2 or 3 years ago, and since then just been on an adventure to do the next cool thing, I guess. That's my intro, man.
Yeah, that's a start.
Kevin Harlander, good buddy of James Nash, and we've worked together quite a bit. I also work in the outdoor industry. I've been kind of all across the board, most recently working with our Golly Outdoors out of Boise, Idaho. Yeah, just really stoked to be here, man. It is a beautiful place.
Greg Jones. I've been honored to be on several of these podcasts with Mr. Nash. I grew up ranching as a cowboy rancher, trapped as a young kid, trapped all the way up through, became a government trapper, and ended that career in the state of Idaho with wolves, and now I'm just kind of a free ranger. So cheers.
I consider all of you to be among my very best friends. I sincerely mean that. But there's another thing that ties us all together, besides the fact that every single one of you has been on the show more than once. We all guide elk together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, we've worked with each other in several different capacities, but we've all guided elk together, guided archery elk. But right now, we are in Hell's Canyon, which is the steepest and deepest gorge in North America that separates the beautiful, rugged, exquisite portion of eastern Oregon from, Idaho. Which, Idaho, I've been thinking about this.
Careful.
It's got to be, Idaho has to be the state where you are most likely to run into a dude who's hunting with llamas.
No. Disagree immediately.
Really?
Montana
Montana's
100%.
overtaken Idaho?
Yeah, because it's like the place you start. I think.
Montana's like a starter hunting state?
Well, no, I don't mean it that way. I think it's like if you grew up somewhere other than the West,
Yeah.
that is what you think of when you think of the West, I think.
Oregon,
Really?
Oregon, Bend, Oregon is the llama center of the world. Come on.
But not hunting with llamas.
They do everything with them, probably.
That's hard to
I
say.
just don't think you can put Idaho over the top of Oregon with hunting llamas.
If
no
you're
way.
if you're going to try and rent llamas to go on a hunting trip, that's going to be in Idaho.
That's a good point. That's a solid point.
I don't
Yeah.
think so.
That is a business in the state of
I
Idaho.
bet you can find one every quarter of a mile in Bend.
Honestly, I think I have some good evidence on this that it's the Idaho-Montana border.
Like Idaho Falls.
They all,
Rigby.
they can all see into Idaho, but they're in Montana.
Okay, that checks out.
Just backing up.
All
my
the
point.
hardcore
Thanks, buddy.
llama guys I know, that's where they're at.
Jordan.
Yep.
Yeah, talking to you, sir. Level up. Okay, first question for the group. What is the hardest job you ever had?
The hardest job I ever had. I think it's hard to answer that, James, because I think jobs are hard for different reasons. Mm-hmm. I think when I was outfitting, the hardest part of that job was managing people, particularly I think the type of people in that business. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I just mean that they're a certain personality type.
And do you mean guides? Do you mean clients? What do
Yeah,
you mean?
no, I mean guides.
Yeah.
Managing guides.
Yeah.
They're on the positive side. They're my kind of people.
Yeah.
They have a certain thing that gets them into that business.
Yeah.
But it makes them hard to manage.
Yeah.
And so I think that was probably my hardest job in that way. My hardest job physically, I remember exactly what it was. This sounds ridiculous, but it was tying baby walnut trees to the little stick going through. When I was 15 or 16 years old, that was my job. Just to, the little support stick on the walnut trees.
Yeah.
Boringest job ever. And that's why it was the worst job ever. You just go into the next tree and there's you don't even see progress because it's just the next tree.
Was this on like a conveyor belt or?
No, it's out in a walnut orchard. They plant the baby trees and they put the post next to it, and somebody's got to tie the ribbons. And the problem is by the time you're done with like whatever there is in a big block of walnut trees, the other end of the trees have grown enough that you got to tie the next ribbon on.
Never ending.
Yeah.
Never ending.
It's like a factory gig, but
Yeah.
at least you're outside.
Sure.
So yeah, those are the two ends of tough jobs from my perspective.
Have you gone back to check on your walnuts?
Yeah. I've seen those orchards recently, actually.
How are they doing?
Good. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how quickly they grow. Makes you feel old,
Yeah. When I built my house, my very first project, after moving in and stuff like that, was to plant trees. Like that's the thing that I considered to be something that was going to take a long time. And I remember a quote that I cannot contribute to the specific individual because I've forgotten that, but I think it was a French philosopher, and he went to his gardener and was like, I would like to plant this specific type of tree. And the gardener said, well, that's going to take 100 years before it bears fruit or whatever. And he's like, well, then we have no time to waste.
Yeah.
Right? Not a moment to waste. So the first thing I did was plant trees. And it is such a cool thing to take care of trees. Yeah, but it's hard. It's very hard.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Those mundane, repetitive tasks, those are tough.
Oh, yeah.
Those are tough jobs. Yeah. What about you, Kevin?
Man, I've got two. I think both for similar reasons. But when I was in high school, I think I was a junior in high school, I got a gig plowing snow in Minnesota. But I wasn't the plow guy. I was the dig out guy. So, a plow rig on a 250 or whatever would roll through a parking lot, and I had to dig out all the entryways after the plow went by.
Ooh. So now it's like compacted snow.
Oh, yeah.
Did we just get a hit on a sturgeon rod?
It sounded dingly.
Yeah, I did hear it.
So, folks, we are sitting in my jet boat right now. We've got 2 sturgeon rods out, and I've got bells on them, and one of them just gave us a little jingle. So this could be interrupted by a sturgeon. We'll see. And Kevin is up. Kevin, he signed up to reel in a fish, so we'll see what happens.
So, yeah, plowing snow, man.
Yeah.
but not really plowing snow, mostly digging snow
Plowing snow with a shovel.
and wet snow.
Yeah.
You know, like wet, gross snow.
Yeah.
Sucked. And it was all night too, which is the first time I've ever, because we grew up in the city, so like jobs ended at quitting time.
Right.
And then fighting fire obviously was like one of the harder jobs, but the most fun. Because you're just like out in a place where you're never going to go again, likely, and you just work until it's done.
Right.
Which was the first experience I had where, you finished when it was 3 days later or whatever.
And I fought fire for the feds. You fought fire for the state.
Yeah.
Which have wildly different sets of rules.
Yeah.
There were occasions where I was allowed to work for 24 hours on initial attacks. When I got to a fire, I could work 24 hours to try and catch that fire. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of occasions that no matter what that fire was doing, I had to quit after 16 hours.
Right. Yeah, and we didn't have that, right?
Yeah.
My last season, we worked from Memorial Day to Labor Day without a day off.
Yeah.
Because you just could. And it was great money, right?
Sure.
You can just, because like after 40, baby, that's OT.
Sure. And when we're talking great money, we were talking about this recently. Like
for
your
17-year-old.
Your base pay is like $14 an hour.
I think I started at $12.75.
Yeah. But then you add overtime, hazard pay, stuff like that, and you can get up to like $28 an hour. It's like, we're living, raking it in, son.
You made a joke of like, we're buying microbrews after this check, which is so fucking crazy.
But that's kind of where you're at,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Greg?
Kind of like Kevin. There's two things that just jump out at me. First one, on a big scale, long range of time, was the ranch. It was brutal amount of work.
There's for sure a fish that's eating on that rod right now.
Yeah.
Like that
Which one is it?
Is it the right one?
Yeah, it's the port side rod.
Okay.
You tell me.
I mean, he's not on right now, but he for sure hit it. Okay. Please don't let me in this fish.
We're dingling.
Oh, he might be. He might be on.
Now, is it a big set? I forget. It's been 10 years.
It's a set on that rod, but you want to kind of feel some pressure. So let's go ahead and kind of sneak over there. I'm going to move.
I'm going to take this off, I think.
No. You keep that on.
Well, we're going live.
We're going live on trying to catch the sturgeon.
Oh, we're hooked already.
Okay. Sorry that Kevin's fish is interrupting you here, Greg.
No, this is good. This is good stuff. Last night, we got to be sure and talk about Cliff's fish last night.
Yeah, Cliff, tell us about your fish, man.
I honestly cannot believe that it happened.
I'd put it in your hand, and if you feel pressure, then give pressure in return. But try not to move the bait. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
It doesn't feel like it's there. That's moving.
So that sinker's on a slider, so he can pull line.
But it's not like he's moving,
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Cliff, tell us about your fish, man. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Nick's Handmade Boots, a family-owned company in Spokane, Washington. This year, Nick's is celebrating its 60th anniversary of making quality work boots for men and women in America. I recently visited their factory to see the boot-making process from start to finish. As a rancher myself, it was a rewarding experience for me to see, feel, and smell the quality leathers processed in 100-year-old tanneries throughout America. This leather is cut, sewn, lasted, and sold by skilled craftsmen before ending up on the feet of folks ready for a day of honest work. I'm currently wearing my Nick's Boots Game Breakers on the Six Ranch as I work cattle, plant my garden, build fence, and prepare for the upcoming hunting season. Nick's has a full assortment of men's and women's work boots to serve wildland firefighters, ranchers, tradespeople, military personnel, and anyone else who values quality footwear made in America. Visit nicksboots.com today to find your next pair of quality American-made work boots. Add a pair of boots and a work belt to your cart and use the code 6RANCH, that's the number 6 and the word ranch, to receive the belt for free.
So last night, my first sturgeon which I had no idea that was even going to be part of this trip, man.
Yeah.
But no, amazing fish. And to be honest, to me, the most amazing part of it was getting in the water with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just holding the thing. It's like holding the dinosaur.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it quite literally is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you telling me that fish is probably over 100 years old is pretty wild to think about. Man.
What I'm hearing from the fish biologists is that like a 6-foot fish in this river is around 120. So a fish like yours at 6.5 could be, older than that by a very substantial margin. There's been fish that have been surveyed here, which your fish was surveyed because that scoot on his left side, that second scoot was cut off. I know of one fish that was caught 10 years apart and had lost an inch.
Oh, really?
Right, in a decade. So either that was a bad measure on one of those occasions, but at any rate, in 10 years of living in here, had not grown.
He didn't grow, yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, so you just
Absolutely amazing. So sturgeon, what the white sturgeon is what we're talking about. They evolved around 240 million years ago. So they're about twice as old as, or more than, twice as old as most of the dinosaurs that went extinct at the end of the Jurassic period. Really, really incredible animals. They're not doing particularly well in this river system. They're not reproducing that well. There's a lot of smallmouth bass here, which are a non-native species, and the smallmouth eat stuff before it can get down to the bottom where the sturgeon can eat it. Something that Idaho is talking about right now is allowing spearfishing for smallmouth bass. We've been down here spearfishing for the last 2 days, but due to the regulations in Oregon and Idaho, we can only spear for non-game species. So we've been targeting squawfish, which are called northern pike minnow, large-scale suckers, and carp. Shot a 13-pound carp. I'm feeling pretty good about myself, man.
Yeah, those things are giant.
Yeah.
You turn the head, and suddenly they're in front of you, and they're not easy to kill either. I think that's you know what I mean?
They're a smart fish.
Yeah, super smart fish.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So what, this is kind of an odd thing, right? You've got 4, accomplished Western elk guides who are in the River Canyon spearfishing in July. What do you think is the nexus between guiding elk and spearfishing?
Oof.
Spanning generations.
I think it's interesting, James, because I think there's 2 types of hunters or guys that are in the hunting world. Some guys are very focused on one thing, and I've never been that way. And I don't want to project on you guys, but I get the feeling from you guys that you guys aren't either. That you're up for the next adventure, and I think that's part of it, at least from my perspective. Does that make any sense to you?
You're the most accomplished spearfisherman among us by a lot, right? You spend a huge part of your winter doing it where you live in Puerto Rico. You've spearfished for your whole life?
Yeah, I mean, off and on for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
But more seriously in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah. And that's about the amount of time that I've taken it more seriously. I just don't live in an oceanic area. So I don't get to do it quite as frequently as you do. But I started spearfishing 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's always been very alluring to me, but 17 of those years have just been massive failures. Without trying to learn, without trying to get trained, without using the correct gear, without going with buddies, lots of, just really stupid decisions. And I can definitely tell you that doing it right is way more enjoyable.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 64 years old. I've never done this before. And in my first outing in Hell's Canyon, which isn't easy, you don't want to get sucked into that out into the river. You got to watch that current. But I was successful today. And in listening to you guys and some of the podcasts, I was really intrigued. And I'm going to tell you, man, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
By the second time I went into the water, I was hunting, and I really I swallowed that
Yeah.
hook. It's deep. You
And
know,
it is hunting too.
It is. It
Yeah.
really
It
is.
absolutely
When
is
you
hunting,
find that
yeah.
perfect
Yeah.
boulder where the water is rolling and you know there's a nice little pocket down there that the water isn't moving, you peek over that and you're just waiting for anything to move. you
Yeah.
know? And they're there. They're usually
Yeah.
there.
I so hope that Idaho does the right thing and allows spearfishing for smallmouth. One, I mean, there's a cajillion of them in here,
Yep.
right? There's so many in here that they're limiting their own growth potential. So if you're a ride or die smallmouth guy and you're like, hey, I love fishing for these things, we're going to make them bigger for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's already plenty of them.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who cares very much about the ecosystem, about native species, hey, we're going to make it better for the native species by removing some of these fish. And then if you're somebody that's like, I really don't want my recreational opportunities taken away, honestly, there's very few people who are going to come down here and do this. That rod is for sure getting hit.
And you ought to see the fish that are just hitting the top of the water around us. I mean, it's evening. It's just the sky is just barely light, and there's fish going nuts everywhere.
Yeah.
This is just an amazing canyon.
This is my first river trip in the new jet boat. Kind of interesting. We're overloaded on the way up here. I'm never going to put that much weight in this boat again. But we've had a pretty nice camp. I mean, Cliff cooked us ribeye steaks last night. We had fish tacos tonight with smallmouth that we caught.
I brought the scotch.
Yeah, yeah, which is on board at present. And Mr. Kevin Harlander is taking care of lunches for us.
Yeah.
Having some light breakfast.
Look at that thing go.
So, if it's pulling like that, dude, you just got to set the hook and do
Really?
this thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but wait until there's tension. He's got to
Oh,
be
look at
pulling,
that.
and then
Yeah.
you set the hook, and then it's Donkey Kong. Gosh, the suspense right now. Okay,
How
Cliff.
big was that fish last night?
I think it was about 6.5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Are we tight? Might need to tighten the drag.
There's something moving down there, I think.
Are you on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's do this.
I think so.
check your drag, because I'm not
Re-
sure if I
reel,
set that.
reel like crazy. We don't want it to hang up in the bottom.
I don't know. It doesn't feel heavy.
There's definitely weight there. Is that drag still pulling?
It feels like it bounces every time I pull it up.
Might be the weight bouncing on you.
We could have a catfish on there too. There's some big catfish in this river. I've definitely been reeling in oh, this must be a small sturgeon, and turns out to just be a
Catfish
catfish.
comes out.
Yeah, but
Just wait and weed.
3-foot catfish. Dang. All right. Well, let's pull the weeds off and cast her back out there and try again. This is gonna be sporty. Cliff, what's the softest job you ever had?
Easiest job I ever had?
Softest.
Softest? My softest job was probably when I was 22, from 22 to 25. I was a financial trader.
What's that mean?
So, yeah, it could mean a lot of different things. I particular traded proprietary strategies. So, I did it for some established investment companies at the time, and then my brother started one, and I started working for him. And what I would do is I would be given a set of equities if it was an equity type of strategy, or a set of debt, just bonds and that sort of thing that I needed to trade, and I would just figure out how to buy it, or if I was selling stuff the most effective and cheapest. So some of my stuff it was at that time I'd still buy it over the phone, and then we had, I don't know how far you want to get into this, man, but everything I did, we were buying and selling stuff at the same time. There were what was called hedge strategies at the time. So a lot of what I would do is find the most efficient way to borrow all the stocks that we shorted. And so that would take phone calls to the investment banks and that sort of thing. So I did a lot of that.
Did you short the housing market?
No, we never had any strategies that were related to that.
Do you wish that you had?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that was during that. That was during that era. That was during that era of, fortunately for us and, my brother's business that still exists, that we weren't in that world. So it didn't benefit us, but it didn't kill us either,
All right, Greg, whenever you're ready, we're collectively moving back to the cabin of the boat.
All right.
All right.
Tighten this line up.
Folks, we missed the fish, we recast the rod, now we wait again. That's the situation. So this podcast setup is a recorder that has 4 microphones plugged into it. So
First time ever.
when a fish messes with us like that, we all have to move as a single unit
Like
to
a
get out
pod.
there.
A pod of
I thought we've
sorts.
done pretty well so far.
Yeah, so far so good, honestly.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Kevin, softest job.
Oh, man. I worked at an ad agency in Minneapolis with some great people, but it was just like so crazy to me how little shit got done.
Really?
Yeah, because I come from like landscaping and like demoing houses, and like
Yeah, real
studied
work.
marketing and biology. So I was like, well, I'll try this for a moment. And it was just really funny to me how my dad used to always think or tell me that. He's like, what do you just talk about ideas? I'm like, yeah, kind of. It was a cool experience, but I quickly realized that it just wasn't for me. It was more about like the office life and the culture and all that stuff that just became bigger than the actual work, And they produce some incredible work, right? Cadillac ads and stuff for Arby's and stuff that's out there in the world now, but it was just pretty soft.
So what did you learn from that job that you are applying to, the work that you do with like Argali
Yeah,
today?
totally. I worked in like the pseudo role, like dual role of like media buying and then like creative service stuff too. So just like understanding the balance between like a creative idea and the analytics that go to it, right? So you could have the best idea in the world, but if nobody gives a shit, it's like doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So trying to balance like the science and the art of everything and everything we do. I learned that as a 22-year-old, that was pretty cool.
Dude, if you can figure out how to balance art and science at 22, like you kind of got it made.
I'm still figuring it out, I think, but it was a good introduction to how they thought about how to figure that out.
Sure.
How to like measure, and they always had 2 creative people to every 1 account person. So because the account person would always win on logic, right?
Sure.
But sometimes you got to take a big hit, and like try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. It was a good experience. I had to take the bus to downtown Minneapolis, right? Which was new for me. Never done that before. It was cool. But it was often the people that were like the weekend stuff that they would do was very different than what I was doing.
Yeah.
So interesting gig.
Greg, softest job.
Don't have one. When
That is the best answer ever.
I've had 3 jobs in my life. The first one was a ranch, which was insanely tough. I ran it for 15 years. My wife and I ran it, for 15 years. And then the hardest short time was laying pipe in Portland, going from a ranch in southeast Oregon.
We're talking about softest.
Yeah, but there wasn't one. And then there was the government job. I was a government trapper, so there were no soft jobs.
You
It
didn't
just
have to
worked.
like bag groceries for a day or
Never.
nothing.
No, I had 3 jobs in my life. I
That's
grew up
incredible.
ranching, trapping, and then laid pipe for 7 months in Portland, which was brutal. And then I became a government trapper. Those are my 3 jobs. I've never had a soft job in my life.
It's incredible.
But one of those 3
Softest?
has to be softer than the other 2.
I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
They're all
They were
softness.
tough. I ran 10 to 12,000 square miles of trapping. I had a 400-mile trap line, so I can't say my government, job was the easiest. In Portland we had a lady that come out and would chase us with a deer rifle in the morning because we woke her up. We went, I'd never run an excavator in my life, and we went 28 feet deep on Burnside, 181st and Burnside, and that's
Oh my God!
and in that first 20 feet of trench, we had 3 coffin boxes stacked up, 10-foot coffin boxes stacked up. The pipe layer was down there, and I was the guy behind with the roller wheel excavator compacting everything behind as we started moving. In that first 20 yards, there was a 22-inch high-pressure cast main. There was an 18-inch high-pressure cast main water line. There was power. There was propane. There was telephone. It was just spaghetti, and I had never run an excavator in my life. And I had to reach down there and compact all this dirt and come up. So, yeah, it was almost a mental breakdown for me.
Not soft.
Not soft. And so I have no soft jobs. So, I'm sorry. I don't.
You're just unwilling to answer the question.
Because one of them has to be the softest.
One of them
They
has
were
to be
all
like
hard
pressure.
jobs, but
right?
one
Like,
had to be the
I'm not trying to
softest.
take anything away from you.
Which was the less hard job of the 3?
Laying pipe in Portland.
Okay.
Once I got good at it, it was, okay, we survived. I'd have to say, laying pipe in Portland was the softest job I ever had. We had druggies on the crews that were, we had one guy that would take the loader downtown Portland, Burnside, with the big loader to buy drugs. And he would come back, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he'd be so wiped out. One time he'd come flying backwards, passed out, and I reached over with the hoe and hooked it and almost flipped his loader over. But I had to wake him up because he was full bore going backwards, absolutely passed out.
Not soft.
Not soft.
Makes a guy feel pretty soft.
Yeah. I had multiple soft jobs.
Yeah, the ad
not just
agency
one.
was hard.
Yeah. I worked at a feed store, like organizing stuff, like organizing pallets with a forklift. That's pretty soft.
I'd take any of those over having to wrap up walnut trees, one after the other, or any of that.
Well, that was in the hard job category.
Huh?
That was the hard job category.
But the thing is, it's all about definition, man. Because I think some of the softest jobs are mentally the hardest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's why the ad agency sucked so much, because I just couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, you're not active. And then fighting fire was a great job. It was hard as hell, but,
What about you?
Yeah, what was your softest job?
Organizing stuff with a forklift. Yeah. And that was funny. It was at a feed store in Dillon, Montana that isn't there anymore. Now it's a Murdoch's. And I hadn't worked there very long. I was a freshman or a sophomore in college. And I'd made enough money fighting fire, and I'd made enough overtime throughout the summer to be able to pay for college and pay for rent and a couple microbrews even throughout the school year. And I asked these folks for a day off, right? And I said I'll make it up on another day, but I would like to have a 3-day weekend so that I can go to Oregon. I've got a buck tag. I need to kill a deer so that I got some meat. And they're like, "Ooh, we don't really do days off." Another rod just went. They said, "We don't really do days off until somebody's worked here for a year." I was like, "Okay, this is about a month out." And I said, "Well, I'll give you 2 weeks notice then, because this is important to me." And they said, "Yeah, we don't really do 2 weeks notice either." So, all right. See ya. I'm out.
Yeah.
And, drove home and shot a buck.
That's right.
And I don't feel bad about that. I feel like that was honest dealing with everybody involved. Like they were holding to their policies. I was holding to what was important to me. There's, plenty of time involved for everybody to make it fair. And I think that was fine. But the job itself, I'm not a terribly organized person. Everybody that knows me knows that I'm not an organized person. I came on a spearfishing trip down here and forgot my wetsuit. All right. I've been swimming around in 67-degree water and battling hypothermia. But
it's 110 or 108.
It was 102 in the shade, for sure. Today I measured it on the old Garmin watch, but Yeah, I wasn't like super well suited for that job, but it was kind of fun running a forklift. If nobody's run a forklift before, like 10 out of 10 would recommend.
It's like a zero-turn lawnmower.
Makes you feel
with forks.
powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Forklift certified.
That's the thing now.
Sure is.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a job, Greg, that you wish you had had but never had?
I can remember sitting on an open or an old swather, no cap, in heat like what it was today.
We get it. Like, not soft. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
okay.
The job I wanted was, I wish my dad had been a sport fisherman in the Florida Keys.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's yeah. Jimmy Buffett was coming on. Yeah, I crave the water. I crave that blue Caribbean, that fishing, that, yeah, that would have been the job.
It's like being a deckhand, first mate, captain,
Sure.
something like that.
Absolutely.
Just
anything.
Working on the ocean.
Anything to get away from the heat
Yeah.
and the dirt and, getting kicked.
But sport fishing, not commercial fishing.
Sport fishing. Yeah, right. I didn't want to, no. Commercial fishing never appealed to me. It was the, I wanted to run the big boat out and chase big fish.
Kevin?
Man, that's a tough one. That's definitely a fish, right?
That's for sure a fish. Like, the
Like-
rod shakes. That moved the boat.
Is he on then? Shall we?
I don't think it's on, man.
That's
but,
the weird thing to me. It's like it's intermittent.
like, this is like a 6,000-pound jet boat, and it just moved the whole boat.
That fish last night did the same thing, though. Remember? We heard
Yeah, it
the
was
bell
tinkling,
dinging,
and then
dinging,
we
dinging.
didn't come down here till he jumped.
Yeah.
Which
Which rod is it?
I think it's the right.
that port rod is bending clear over to the rocks, and it was going kind of out like that one, wasn't it?
Well,
They both are, though, eh?
So what I think is that maybe you got in the current when you
Yeah,
recast,
yeah.
and that weight's rolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to go with that.
Okay.
Okay. Keep going.
I think that I would like to have been some kind of biologist, right? Like wildlife biologist, just to be out. I see the rough job they have now, though, and I'm glad I'm not, right?
Rough as in like what?
Well, just it's a lot of like public interface that aren't very stoked with them.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And I recognize they're beholden to an agency and things like that, but
They've got pressure from every side.
yeah, it's just impossible to win,
Yeah.
right? Which I don't thrive in those situations. I like to win once in a while. But I think if I had to do anything, right, I think I would be a fly fishing guide on little water. I just love watching dry flies get ate.
I think 2015 was the first time you guided fly fishing for me.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. And I loved it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the problem that I always saw with it, too, and this is the same thing with fire, is like how long can you do this before you're like, oh, man, I don't know what else I can do very well.
Right.
And I was, I guess, smart enough at the time to know, like, well, I can't fight fire till I die. That's impossible. Yeah, I mean, you can, right? You can move up and whatever, but you can't really get, like, fighting fire till you die.
Right.
Same thing with fly guiding. I think you can do it till you're ancient, but you got to burn out, man. I mean, same thing with elk guiding, right? Like, after a season, you're like, I need a month off. So, I don't know. I just really enjoy, like Greg, I enjoy being on that type of water specifically, and the fact that it's active every day and you got to, like, you know where the fish live and you get to meet different people, and I'm pretty emotionally in tune with folks. I like talking with people, hearing different stories, and that's a great way to do it because there's nobody else on that boat with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have fabulous emotional intelligence, which is a real weakness of mine, and it's something that I've always admired about you. And you are also the type of friend that, is willing to, like, call me out and help me with it when I don't realize that I'm doing it wrong.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. On the guide burnout thing, and I know there's a bunch of guides that listen to this show, so I'm going to bring it up, and I've talked about this before, but I'm going to do it again. The scary thing about burning out as a guide is that it sneaks up on you.
Totally, man.
Like, you don't realize it. It's not like a slow burn. It's where I'm starting to lose passion for fly fishing. It's like you're going strong, and then suddenly you wake up and you look at your fly fishing gear and you're like, I don't I don't want to do this. I have
wanna do something
no
else.
Don't
desire
wanna
to go
touch it.
do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So, like, don't fall under the spell that you think that you're going to see it coming, because you're just not.
That's right.
You're just flat out not. And you can lose that thing that you loved so much, that you wanted to dedicate your life and your soul and your happiness and your health to making sure that other people could experience it.
Yeah.
Like, you can lose that. You can lose it without ever knowing that it's sneaking up on you. It happened to me with fly fishing, you know.
Totally.
I've fly fished like once in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Twice maybe, and I love it when I do it, but I need that buddy to come along and be like, hey man, like, I really want to go fishing today. I want to go fishing with you. Like, let's go do it. And then I have a great time.
Sure.
But I've completely lost that, like, oh, there's a hatch on, I'm going to string up a rod and go whoop on some fish.
Right.
That's gone. I lost it. And that used to be so important to me.
I've also been in tune, you know, just with like things you didn't grow up with that are so exotic and new. Like, we grew up spin fishing, man, for walleyes, right? Like, nothing like fly fishing. So I think it was just like I got to that point later in life where I was like, man, this is really fun. But like, how long does that last, you know, before? And so what I've been trying to do is like keep it for myself a little bit, you know, like enjoy going down the river 2 days a week after work.
Sure.
Because I can, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yep.
Cliff, what you think?
Job that I wish I would have done.
Yeah.
You know, I think. So I got my pilot's license when I was 17. I actually got it before my driver's license because I failed my driver's license the first time. Failed my driver's license the first time on an unprotected left turn.
You don't have to parallel park an airplane, huh?
No, yeah.
Sure don't.
So I couldn't get an appointment. I went late, and then I couldn't get an appointment to retest. And what's crazy about it is I feel like I was a decent driver, but if I mean I have nothing to say about the test, because if the woman wouldn't have like been very stern about stop, we could have both died. Like, it was, an unprotected left turn, you're yielding the traffic coming this way, and I was for sure just pulling out. I don't know, nerves got to me or whatever. But anyways, between my first driver's test and my second driver's test, I took my pilot's license and my pilot's test and passed. So I flew quite a bit from like 17 to maybe 21. And I always thought, being a bush plane pilot or something like that would be fun.
Yeah.
And I think I would have liked it. Like, now whenever I fly in the backcountry, mountain flying, that sort of thing with somebody else, going into a camp or whatever, I always think to myself, yeah, this would have been fun. But I think the thing about that is I think small airplane pilots, the problem is that's the kind of flying I would have wanted to do. I had no interest being an airline pilot or something like that. But I think that it's actually somewhat similar to guiding. Those people burn out too. I don't know why, but when I talk to them when I'm flying into, remote backcountry strips and stuff, I always talk to people because I'm intrigued by, like, what if I would have taken that career path, So that would have for sure been it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Flying. It's still, and it's weird because even after selling my business, I view it as, because the obvious question would be like, well, why don't you go do it now? Why don't I go, create a business in that world and get all my commercial ratings or whatever? I could still do it. I feel like that time has passed for me. You know what I mean? That's like a younger guy's adventure career / whatever,
In one of the, class 3 plus, class 4 minus rapids down here that we came through on the way up, like I crested over a wave and probably had a little bit too much throttle on. And then when I came down into the trough, I carried too much acceleration, submarined the boat, wave came over the top of the boat, and the pump came out of the water, and we cavitated and lost our momentum. And then as I sat back down into that water column, I no longer had the momentum or the power to continue going up this big wave train. So I had to walk the boat out to the right, find a little bit slower water, power back up, and then go on through it. which was fine, right? But it requires a bunch of movements on really the two primary controls that I have, which is the steering stick and the throttle. That's fewer controls that you use in an airplane, but when we got through that rapid, he said, it's interesting seeing you run the jet boat is similar to flying a plane. In what ways are piloting a jet boat similar to piloting a plane? The word pilot comes from boats for a long time before it came for planes.
I mean, I can only comment to the similarities from an observer on the jet boat side, because I've never driven one. But what I was observing.
Well, you're driving all the way out tomorrow, so get ready.
Oh,
well, you guys better put your life jackets on.
I hope you.
You better sleep with them tonight.
Paid attention to the 70 or so river miles between us and the ramp. And memorize those
you just
carefully.
zig and then zag, you'll be fine.
Yeah. But just observing you drive the boat. I almost said fly the boat. Just observing you.
We flew for a minute.
Felt like it from the back, let me tell you.
One, I could tell that you were focused the whole time. Like, I could just tell by your mannerisms and stuff. You were focused, particularly when you're coming to a rapid. And I could tell that it was, just from your mannerisms, it wasn't like, hey, I'm not going to bother James with a question right now because he's, like, in the zone.
Yeah.
Figure out how to navigate this. I think that's very similar to mountain flying.
Yeah.
Or flying in scenarios where there might be, 30 different paths you can take, but, a subset of them will work, but that subset's pretty small. So you got to figure it out. Like, the decision-making process is really important to the outcome, because there's only a few ways you can do it where it's safe. You know what I mean? And the thing is what's weird about flying, and I get the feeling it's the same as driving this jet boat, is you might be able to make one mistake, but 2 mistakes and you're going to die.
Right.
And I think that is what I was talking about. It's like, okay, yeah, you got to really be on it because you're on the edge all the time. Just the nature of it, you can't have 7 backup plans.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you learn to fly an airplane, they teach you how to fly an airplane in a way that you always have, okay, I'm going to always keep this much altitude, all these different ways. I'm going to always be looking for a place to emergency land.
Right.
I'm building up these layers of safety. But then when you actually go do it, particularly if you get into backcountry or mountain flying, all that goes away. And if you're really good at it, you only have 2 layers, And sometimes the reality is you have 1 layer. If you don't make the right decision, you're going to die.
Yeah.
There's
also a huge similarity between the way that water works in a whitewater river to the way that air works in mountains, which, water's denser than air, obviously, but the way that it's acting, the eddies, the rapids, the turbulence, all of that is actually very similar to the way that wind works as it goes over, honestly, similar terrain, just higher up. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And also just the interplay between power and that, right?
Sure.
In an airplane, if you don't have enough power because of the wind and the certain conditions or whatever, you could really get yourself in trouble really quick.
Yeah.
Same deal with this. I could. That seemed to be from just an observer standpoint.
Yeah, and like flying downwind, dude, is like not everybody's favorite thing to do. In some situations, you're gonna see that tomorrow because we're gonna be flying downwind.
Yeah,
we're riding down current, and I don't get the luxury of slowing down the way that I do when I'm coming up.
Yeah,
and I also don't get to see the rapids because the water's falling away from me on a slope. So I have to remember all of these things in my mind from the trips that I've done up and down, whether it's rafts or jet boats or whatever. I have to remember all of them. The other really wild thing about this river in particular is that it has a tide. Mm-hmm. So right now, This river is doubling every night and then reducing by half every day. And the crazy thing, and that's because of the hydro dams. So they're holding back water during the day. So then the water level drops to like 9,000 CFS, cubic feet per second. A basketball is about 1 cubic foot. So it's still a ton of water. And then, at night they're bumping it up to 18,000, 22,000. The energy that's coming from these dams is getting exported to California. The energy that we're using here in this part of Oregon is coming from coal plants in Wyoming, right? So hydropower comes with problems of its own, but it is very clean as far as energy goes. And that's being exported for something that, isn't super clean, which is coal. Super, super interesting. But because of that, man, I don't know whether I'm going down an 18,000 or 20,000, 22,000 cubic foot per second river or 9,000 or 6,000 cubic foot per second river. The guys that live down here and guide down here all the time, like they've got marker rocks throughout the entire river. And they can look at that and know what the flow is and know if they need to adjust their line. People like Mark Knapp, who have run this thing, close to every month of the year for almost an entire career for Oregon State Police. Mark runs the same line, whether it's 100,000 CFS or 6,000 CFS. He runs the safe line. And I've heard from multiple people that have ridden with him that they don't think that he deviates the center line of his boat more than 12 inches off that line on every trip.
That's crazy.
Another awesome thing is shout out to Oregon State Police, man. Law enforcement, that's a freaking hard job. We're talking about hard jobs. That's a hard job.
Sure.
You're not getting a lot of love there, and it's tough in ways that people just can't imagine. But I was running a section of the river that I'd guided on with rafts, but I'd never run in a jet boat before. So I'd never gone up. I'd never seen that perspective before this spring. I wanted to go do a new section to bear hunt. So I, sent Mark a text. And I was like, man, can you talk me through this a little bit? He's like, yeah, come down to the office. I had a cup of coffee and then sat down for almost 2 hours, and he talked me through every single turn in the river, every single rock, every single flow. We looked at Google Earth. We talked about all of it. And, I took meticulous notes. I went downtown and laminated it afterwards. And he said, in 18 or 20 years or whatever, nobody's ever asked me.
Yeah.
I was like, really? Like, you have more knowledge about this than anybody, and nobody's ever asked?
Yeah.
Like, that's life-saving information.
Sure.
So, shout out to Oregon State Police.
Yeah.
Freaking
big time.
Appreciate them. Yeah. Oh, man. Cliff, coming into this, like you've spearfished in California, Puerto Rico, lots of places in the world. You've done blue water, you've done reef. Have you ever spearfished in freshwater before?
I don't think I have, James. I was trying to think about that. I don't think I even did as a kid.
Yeah.
With a pole spear or whatever. I think this is the first time I've ever shot at fish in freshwater.
So beyond the freshwater aspect of it, this is a river that has Class 5 rapids. It has incredible eddies, currents, undercurrents, rock cliffs all around, huge boulders, limited visibility. What was the difference between the reality of spearfishing here in Hells Canyon versus your expectation?
Probably the biggest thing that jumps out to me is something I didn't expect is I actually expected the fish to be dumber. Particularly the fish, like carp, that sort of thing.
Sure.
I thought they would just sit there. And particularly the fish that were in groups.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we would shoot one fish at a groups, and that was it.
Right.
That surprised me.
Yeah.
I thought it would be, you find a group and they just sit in there in a koi pond, And so my expectation there was way off, but I will say that it makes it a lot more fun when you know you got to hunt them.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say that's a bad thing by any means. It makes it much more fun.
Yeah, you've got one crack at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of things have to line up, seemingly.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is it's hard. I've drift speared a lot in the ocean, but that's different because
What is drift spearing for people that don't
so
know?
you jump off the boat here, right? You get in the current. A lot of times when you're blue water fishing, you'll put out a flasher and you'll chum, and you basically drift with the current. And usually you set up the drift where the divers, the spear fishermen, jump off the boat, and they're going to drift over some sort of feature, like an underwater pinnacle, maybe a wreck,
Yeah.
something like that, where the fish are going to be there. So you're going to time it where you jump in, you put the flasher down, you start chumming, and by the time you kind of get the chum going down past the flasher, ideally you're over this structure around then, or a little bit, basically that's what you're going for, because you're going to pull the fish that are up off of that structure, or hanging around that structure, because bait are hanging around the structure. So now that's a lot different because you are in moving water, but you're only fighting the current if you need to move, right? You get to chasing something's shot, or you need to dive down and, maybe a wahoo shows up and you've got to fight the current a little bit to get over there. That's totally different than the water here. You're always fighting the current, right? In the sense that, you see a fish, if you drop down to try to shoot it, you have to fight that current the whole time. You know what I mean? That's different. It's different than what I would call like drift spearing in the ocean. You basically ride the currents in the ocean. Here you're fighting them all the time. And I found it hard to be real sneaky on fish here because of it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's lack of practice.
Well,
you duck dive, and even if you're going to only dive 15 feet, if you go straight down, you could, if the fish is in front of you 10 feet, when you go straight down, you could end up right on top of the fish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, or past it.
Yeah, who knows, right? And so now you're making a lot more motion. They're going to, So it's interesting. I think that's a very cool aspect of it. I actually think one of the big benefits of this type of spearfishing is just getting reps in at shooting.
Yeah.
You can dive a lot in the ocean. I mean, blue water, lots of days you're never going to shoot your gun.
Right.
But even reefs in the ocean, right? You're looking for certain fish. You may only depends on what you're doing, but you may not shoot your gun that much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're seeing fish. Like we're finding the fish, and all of us connected, which I think is a tremendous achievement. I would love to be corrected on this, but I don't know if anybody has ever come to this whitewater river in this remote wilderness canyon on a spearfishing trip before.
Oh, that's cool.
I
Likely not. I mean,
I've never heard of it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. But while there's a lot of danger involved in this, and I'm not going to pretend like it's not dangerous. It's a dangerous trip up. It's dangerous diving. There's a lot of rocks. There's limited visibility. There's tremendous undercurrents in places, and a lot of people have drowned here, and it's a tough situation. But if you're not overweighted, we were really, really cautious on this trip. Like, we had 2 people observing every time that we had 2 people diving, and then the divers were watching each other. And I so appreciate all of you guys being willing to do that. I know it's not particularly fun to sit on a rock and watch me paddle around, but we're all looking out for each other, and I think that those are some precautions that we've got to take here. But what an opportunity!
Oh yeah,
to come up here and hunt big fish, and see lots of fish. And man, I wish we could hunt the bass because they're so cocky.
Oh yeah.
And it's like removing bass from this ecosystem is going to do nothing but good for literally everything. Like, why not? There's no limit on bass here. The season is open year round, and there's no limit. So why would the state of Oregon ever care? Why would the state of Idaho ever care if people are coming in here and spearfishing for them.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I really hope Idaho makes the right decision on that, because probably Oregon will reciprocate in this waterway, and it will start to open up these like tremendous recreational opportunities for people to engage in this. Yeah. And good conservation to boot. So I just think there's so many wins involved in it. What is, Greg, since you're new to this, a lesson from spearfishing that you are going to apply to guiding elk this season?
Be prepared for what I guess you don't know. But,
But how do you do that?
yeah, I come into this, I wasn't ready for, I guess, how incompetent I was going to be underwater with the spear gun. I'd never handled one before, but man, I've pulled the trigger on a lot of stuff in a lot of tough, in a lot of tough situations. Out of a fixed wing aircraft or rotorcraft, and I thought, well, that covers it, right? No, I was a bumbling fool down there.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, I got fins on that are 3 times longer than anything I've ever used. I'm in a current that is dangerous. I've got I think today I ran 3 different types of spear guns, 2 different pole spears and a spear gun.
Yeah,
and
so
all of them.
So you had a 9-foot Nomad pole spear.
Yep.
With a slip tip, which I love. It's like that's like a blue water, like I'm gonna go shoot, wahoo or cubera or like, big hogfish type of pole spear. And then, one of my favorite, which is my 3-prong kai spear, made in a wahoo, like super badass, really quick, just fun.
Easy to handle.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect intro into the water.
Intuitive.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the recurve bow of spearfishing.
Yeah.
I really like that little spear. And
then the spear gun.
And then you also shot the pin flicker from Aimrite, which, sorry folks, not on the website. You gotta know somebody, but man, I love that gun.
Yeah, I learned real fast that everything was so new, and I missed 3 carp today, and I had them pinned, but I wasn't ready. There they are.
Yeah.
The current's taking me away. Oh crap! My fins are so big that I can't maneuver. And then I pulled the spear gun up, and I learned real fast not to. It took all of my strength to cock that thing, to pull that bungee down and get it into that slot. It took everything I had. It's going to be interesting, the bruises I'm going to have on my chest here in a day or two. But I learned real fast that you want to hold on to that when you pull the trigger, because that thing popped me in the mouth so hard.
What did that gun?
Yeah.
You weren't expecting any recoil.
Oh, it's got a little bit of recoil there.
Yeah.
That got me good, and so I'm blowing air and spitting. It's like,
you got to get him out there a little bit.
Yeah. Straighten that
I'm getting
arm,
right
son.
up there. Boom,
Yeah.
That punched me good.
Got you pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
And
That's a single band gun.
Yeah, I could see that though. Like, you're not anticipating it.
No.
Yeah.
So it was.
You've been shouldering rifles for 64 years.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So now I'm sticking this thing out here, like a sawed-off shotgun.
Oh, because
It's
you're
gonna knock your
aiming
front
too.
teeth.
Yeah.
I'm trying to aim, and and I'm getting moved, and
That's probably my fault.
No, I should have known.
I'll take.
The effort it takes to get that band down there, dude. Something's going to happen when you turn it loose.
Yeah.
It's going to go both ways. I should have known that.
But you know what's funny is so people who are listening, they can't see it, but you're doing this palms up, pulling the band down.
Yeah.
And this is totally the intuitive way to pull the band.
Right.
Next time you do it, put palms down.
Really?
And pull this.
Really?
And you'll find that you're much stronger.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because everybody does it this way. Like, crank down on that thing. But palms down, it'll be easier.
Good to know.
So it's easier for me by a lot that way.
You know what I found is the best lesson in learning how to crank that band back is watching a 110-pound Kylio made up.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Oh yeah,
crank back bands on a gun that's like
I was not
20
ready.
centimeters longer than mine. It's like, okay, All right, time to pour some coals on the fire.
You can't be like, this is undoable. The bands are too short on this gun. No, you just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I Greg, I think you almost touched on it. But one thing I noticed about spearfishing that is very much elk hunting related is I always like the dynamic of getting drawn on elk.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're spearfishing, it's always like that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, when do I turn the
especially
gun
with the
on?
pole spear.
Yeah. Because they can see everything. You're already in the zone. It's like you rarely are going to be, quote, drawn when you see them unless the gun is already pointing at them. Because obviously with the spear gun, you got the bands back. It's like ready to go. But if they're not right in front of the gun, you've got to move the gun over to them, and they're in the zone already.
Yeah.
Then let's turn the pole spear crossways into the current. Now off you go.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
You just got a full sail of current there. Wow.
Yeah. I'm much more familiar with the gun than I am the pole spear, and I had a fish. I dove down to the bottom and was holding onto this rock because I didn't bring a wetsuit, and because of that I wasn't wearing a weight belt, so I was like stuck using rocks as ballast. So I was diving down, I was holding onto this rock to hold me onto the bottom, and I was just waiting for a fish to like come see what this big nervous object was. And I had a carp swim up right next to me, and I had the pole spear pulled back, and he came up like next to me in broadside, not in front of me. And I was like, all right, I'll get you where you are. And I forgot about like that, 5 feet of pole spear that was behind my hand, and it kept like running into my side. And now I'm like, turning my belly up and trying to hold on to this rock, and this fish is looking at me like, you idiot, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
It'd be like going into Home Depot and let's just pick up a 16-foot 2x6.
Yeah.
Or, a 2x4. Now walk through the whole store and don't hit anybody or anything with it. That's what it's like trying to maneuver this 9-foot pole spear through the rocks and the current, and here comes the fish. Oh, shoot, there he goes. Oh, I didn't, you got to have it cocked, and that takes some strength. Man, that takes some strength. Yeah.
Sure.
Especially that Nomad. Like, you've got to mean it if you want to get back to the grip on that gun. But, and I about guarantee this is a Hell's Canyon first. I got a carp from the bank yesterday with the pole spear, and we just, after we got camp set up, we saw these carp that were cruising along the rocks, and I ran and got my Nomad and was like getting down there and cocking the band, and I got really close to him, and I was having to like shoot from the hip, Sure. Using the Pythagorean theorem, if you will. And I finally connected on one. That was pretty cool.
Coming up here, been anticipating this trip for quite a while. So stoked for it to come up here with you guys. But I thought, there's no way in hell anybody is going to kill a fish with a spear gun in Hell's Canyon. Not in this one. There's no way.
Yeah,
we're going to go up. We're going to have some fun. We'll fish. Do some bass. We'll cook. Have fun. Visit. Have a drink. Run the new river boat. Check out the rapids. But nobody's going to stick a fish. There's no way. And last night, all day today, it's pretty impressive.
Greg, I'll tell you one thing that you already know about this crew. We always kill.
And we always figure it out.
This is quite a new, but this is quite a different venue.
It is.
Hell's Canyon, Snake River, spearfishing.
The funny thing, man, I felt less scared in the water this trip than ever before in this canyon.
Yeah.
I've been down it a few times, right? And it's always from a rubber boat with a life jacket on. But, like, once you're in it and you can see how water moves underneath the rocks, it's just, like, such a more intuitive thing where it's like I had no fear. I was never like, oh, I'm going to get sucked out there because it's like 2 quick kicks with the fins. Yeah. And you're like back, you might hold in that section for a while, right?
Or you feel it, like you go out a little far, you start feeling the current, you're like, I can't beat that. I'm going back. Yeah.
That's what was most impressive to me is just the lack of fear of the water. Like there was definitely fear when you saw a carp out of your peripheral.
Yeah.
You know,
They're
right?
big, man.
Where it's just like there's no viz. That was weird, but like the water itself, man, total lack of fear. And I don't mean that arrogantly.
Yeah.
I mean it is more of appreciation of like, yeah, it can be done with the safety measures in place, because we were cautious, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, about where we went, what we tried to accomplish.
I would say 100%. Yeah, it can be done, especially the way we did it.
Yeah.
With the safety measures, easing into it. You know, we started in the smaller pools, eased up into the bigger pools that had eddies, but never one time did I feel that anybody was at risk.
No, and it's such an ego check too. Like, there's certain riffles that were like back eddies that I just didn't go through.
Yep. Yeah.
You just like stop and you're like, okay, I need 10 kicks to get through this. I don't have the energy for that.
Yeah.
You're so in tune with your body, I think, when you're focused on breathing.
Yeah.
Versus just like running around the mountains or whatever. Like, oh, I can get up there, and it's like 4 days later. You know?
Yeah. And man, now that I've been like taking this seriously for a few years, and I've learned that fish really key in on how you're living at that moment. Like trying to manage the current and the fear I have of this river. You know, I know people who have drowned here. Like there's bodies in this river.
Yeah.
And I've been afraid of swimming in this river my whole life. And I've been coming down here my whole life. But I've never got to know the bottom of this river the way that I have on this trip.
Yeah.
And I have such a different level of comprehensive understanding. And it's not a comprehensive understanding, that's the wrong word, but I'm getting closer to that by looking at what these rocks actually do. And a great example is there's a lot of sheer cliffs that come straight down into the rock, come straight down into the water. And I've fished those a lot, and I've caught fish on those a lot by, you know, throwing bass jigs at them. But what I've learned is that all of those that I've seen diving on this trip are undercut at the bottom. So they appear to be sheer and straight coming down into the water, but if you dive down them, they all undercut on the bottom. So there's a cave at the bottom of those things. And dude, that's just fascinating to me. And every little bit of understanding that you get of this water helps you in your ability to appreciate it, to navigate it, to understand it. I love that. You know, it's like learning for the first time that trees have roots.
Right. I think it's, you know how I would describe it, man, is, and it goes for the ocean too, but here I felt it because, again, it was like a little bit newer for me, is you learn to dance with it, right? If you really think about people who, or I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of people who drown in the ocean or in a river, they get in, they didn't expect it, they fall off a boat or whatever, and they get to fighting, you know, some current, and they don't change. They just keep fighting it until they get exhausted, and then they die.
It's like fighting the
Yeah.
rip. The
And
rip
if they just decided, like, hey, can I dance with this a little bit and move out of it? Can I go this way or that? It's like, yeah, rip currents in the ocean. You know, once you know and you can feel one, you know what it is, it's not that dangerous. You know what I mean? But if you just put your head into it and try to fight it, you're going to die every time.
You're going to lose.
You know?
Yeah.
But once you know how to do the dance, it's so less intimidating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Agreed.
And you get way more comfortable all of a sudden.
Yeah. Here's something that I want to add right now. For the folks who are listening, please understand, I want you to try spearfishing. Whether that is in saltwater, whether that is in freshwater, I want you to go out and try it. And I want you to try it in the least expensive way that you can do it safely, the closest to where you live. And that doesn't mean that you've got to get in a jet boat and charge up some remote wilderness canyon and dive under these types of conditions. But do try it, because I guarantee you're going to get a lesson from that first day of spearfishing that you can apply to something else in your life. And I don't care whether your job is hard or soft. I don't care what it is. It might be something to do with your relationships. But spearfishing specifically, more so than any other style of hunting or fishing that I've ever experienced, which has been a lot, it's giving me life lessons.
Oh, yeah.
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 Pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
It is pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
It's got a steep learning curve, like at the beginning, you know?
It does, but man, these schools are the way. Like,
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
go to the school.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
don't struggle for a couple
No, yeah,
decades
yeah.
like I did. Like, just go to the schools.
Yeah.
And,
Get some
you'll be
comfort.
so far ahead. Okay, last question for you guys. Why do you think I asked you about your hardest and softest jobs? Kevin.
Man. Probably because we're spearfishing and it seems pretty hard at times, and then also pretty soft at times, I imagine. You know, like when you're in it and you get a little better at it, it doesn't seem as hard. Or just maybe just to show that you can like do anything from a point, right? From a starting point, right?
What do you think, Cliff?
I don't.
Why would
That's a hard one.
why would I ask those questions?
Why? So I have no idea why you would ask them. I really don't.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing that, and maybe this relates to why you asked them, that I noticed from everybody's answers, including yours, James, is that some of the softer stuff was earlier in life, and then we decided to do harder jobs.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Which is kind of an interesting observation, at least from if you took a rational perspective on it. It's like, hey, well, why wouldn't you stay with the soft job? You know,
Chasing something.
Yeah, so maybe it's related to that, but other than that, man, I don't know.
What do you think?
I think in some way probably has to gives us all a chance to have a perspective on where we've been, what we've done, accomplished, what was the easiest, and maybe it was the easiest, but not even close to the most enjoyable. What may have been the hardest, but that hardest one may have been the most enjoyable. I think it's something to where you show both ends of that in a person's life. And I think in four people's lives that have done a lot, you know, that have accomplished a lot in the things that they have pursued. So I think that question had to do with showing both ends of it.
I think that your work really shapes who you are, and not just the result of the labor, but the type of effort that goes into it. And I don't want to take away from anybody who's doing a job that they think is soft, because that job would be impossible for somebody else. I don't want to take away from somebody who is doing a job that's hard, because a lot of hard jobs are looked down upon. It's like, oh, you're doing a hard job because you're not capable or talented enough or have the opportunities to do something else, you know, that has a higher return for less effort. But I do think that all of these things are really formative experiences that change who you are as a person, change what you're capable of, change what you're appreciative of. And I also want to highlight the fact that the four of us are doing something that all of us like deeply, deeply enjoyed. Like we all really enjoyed coming up here, doing this trip together, doing something that is hard and benefiting from it. And without all of the decisions that we've made in our lives and all of the employment and effort, you know, regardless of what it was, all of that led us to where we are, which is in a really special place. Like, we're getting to, you know, experience a really cool place. We're getting to catch, you know, 6.5-foot dinosaurs.
Yeah.
We're getting to, you know, spearfish in a place where maybe nobody ever thought that would happen. And we're hanging out with each other and having a good time and drinking scotch and about to fire up a cigar, and maybe this sturgeon will shape up and act right and eat this bait, and it's all possible because of the employment decisions that we've made, and really every decision that we've made. But I just want to encourage everybody out there to keep doing the work and know that the harder you try, no matter what you're trying at, it's going to lead you closer to an opportunity like what we're having right now.
It's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
Be patient. Your failures are going to be your best teachers.
Dude, so true.
Yeah.
Man, I listened to an incredible book lately by Hicks and Gracie called Breathe. You guys come across that one?
Yeah,
I haven't read it.
Never heard of it.
Yeah.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Good book.
So, I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but when Hickson was a kid competing in jiu-jitsu in Brazil, of course, he's the golden child of the Gracie family in a lot of ways. He got 2 presents from his father if he lost a fight, and he got 1 if he won, right? So he was more heavily rewarded for losing than for winning, because winning was a reward of its own in a lot of ways. But losing was also to be encouraged because there's so much more opportunity for growth in it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
And he's the most winning Gracie of all the myriad of Gracies who are out there.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty incredible. So, yeah, that's it. Any closing thoughts?
Man, I just think being in the water like that, I have a busy brain generally, and there's 2 things that I get in the flow state doing.
Yeah.
As of now, there's been more, and there probably will be more, but it's doing this and then archery elk hunting.
Yeah.
Right, where you just have to be locked in, no other thought exists, and that's super healthy.
Yeah.
Right. I really appreciate that part of it, so thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, I can relate to that too, man. I think to expand on what you said, James, just everybody should try spearfishing. People should just try free diving too, man, because it does exactly what was just said, man. When you're doing it, you can't think about anything else, and it teaches you so much about your body. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, but no, other than that, man, thanks for having us. This is an epic trip.
My pleasure.
It was interesting today to watch Cliff go down. And when I would go down, it's okay, I can do this. I figured I could stay down a minute. But when you're pushing against current, when you're swimming, you're trying to fight to get in a position, you breathe, you try and take a big breath, and down you go. Man, 30 seconds, I'll bet at best, that I would last. And I'm coming roaring up. Cliff would go down and be down and be down.
Yeah, we almost lost him today. I was he's still under there, man.
Has anybody seen Cliff? And to see that kind of control and to start to get just a peek into what that control does, not only for just physical but for your mentalness, to help. It's just this is a kick, and to be able to do it with you guys. The conversations that are had from daylight till dark with these guys is just, it's the best. The camaraderie is just absolutely phenomenal. So, happy camper. This has been one heck of a trip.
Okay. Well, all we've got to do is catch another dinosaur and, get some good sleep under some bright stars, pack up, and hopefully I remember the way to zig and zag on the way out. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Hope you all are having a good day, and I really hope that you get an opportunity to try this because it's a pretty special thing. Y'all have a good night. I just want to take a second and thank everyone who's written a review who has sent mail, who has sent emails, who has sent messages. Your support is incredible. And I also love running into you at trade shows and events and just out on the hillside when we're hunting. I think that that's fantastic. I hope you guys keep adventuring as hard and as often as you can. Art for the Six Ranch podcast was created by John Chatelain and was digitized by Celia Harlander. Original music was written and performed by Justin Hay, and the Six Ranch podcast is now produced by Six Ranch Media. Thank you all so much for your continued support of the show, and I look forward to next week when we can bring you a brand new episode.